friends, it's Mrs. Finlayson again, back to finish chapter 12 of Matilda by Roald Dahl. We are in the middle of the chapter called The Weekly Test, and the Trunchbull is in their classroom. She's already made one little boy stand on his head in the corner. She picked up another little boy by his hair because he didn't know 2 times 7. And when we left off, she was saying how she doesn't like small people because they just annoy her. Another extremely brave little boy in the front row spoke up and said, "But surely you were a small person once, Miss Trunchbull, weren't you?" "I was never a small person," she snapped. "I have been very large all my life, and I don't see why others can't be the same way." "But you must have started out as a baby," the boy said. "Me, a baby?" shouted the Trunchbull. "How dare you suggest such a thing? What cheek! What infernal insolence! What's your name, boy? And stand up when you speak to me." The boy stood up. "My name is Eric Ink, Miss Trunchbull," he said. "Eric what?" the Trunchbull shouted. "Ink," the boy said. "Don't be a dummy, boy. There's no such name." "Look in the phone book," Eric said. "You'll see my father there under Ink." "Very well, then," the Trunchbull said. "You may be Ink, young man, but let me tell you something. You are not indelible. I'll very soon rub you out if you try getting clever with me. Spell what?" "I don't understand," Eric said. "What do you want me to spell?" "Spell what, you idiot? Spell the word what." "W-O-T," Eric said, answering too quickly. There was a nasty silence. "I'll give you one more chance," the Trunchbull said, not moving. "Oh, yes, I know," Eric said. "It's got an H in it. W-H-O-T. It's easy." In 2 large strides, the Trunchbull was behind Eric's desk, and there she stood, a pillar of doom towering over the helpless boy. Eric glanced fearfully back over his shoulder at the monster. "I was right, wasn't I?" he murmured nervously. "You were wrong," the Trunchbull barked. "In fact, you strike me as a sort of poisonous little pockmark that will always be wrong. You sit wrong, you look wrong, you speak wrong. You are wrong all round. I will give you one more chance to be right. Spell what?" Boys and girls, can you spell the word what? Eric hesitated. Then he said very slowly, "It's not W-O-T, and it's not W-H-O-T. I know, it must be W-H-O-T-T. Standing behind Eric, the Trunchbull reached out and took hold of the boy's 2 ears, one with each hand, pinching them between her forefinger and thumb. "Ow!" Eric cried. "Ow, you're hurting me." "I haven't started yet," the Trunchbull said briskly. And now, taking a firm grip on his 2 ears, she lifted him boldly out of his seat and held him aloft. Like Rupert before him, Eric squealed the house down. From the back of the classroom, Miss Honey cried out, "Miss Trunchbull, please don't let him, don't, please let him go. His ears might come off." "They never come off," the Trunchbull said. "Do you think it's possible for them to come off?" "I've discovered through long experience, Miss Honey, that the ears of small boys are stuck very firmly to their heads." "Let him go, Miss Trunchbull, please," begged Miss Honey. "You could damage him. You really could. You could wrench them right off." "Ears never come off," the Trunchbull shouted. "They stretch most marvelously, like these are doing now, but I can assure you they never come off." Eric was squealing louder than ever and pedaling in the air with his legs. Matilda had never before seen a boy, or anyone else for that matter, held aloft by his ears alone. Like Miss Honey, she felt sure that both his ears were going to come off at any moment with the weight that was upon them. Miss Honey looked so concerned. I would be too. The Trunchbull was shouting, "The word what is spelled W-H-A-T. Now spell it, you little wart." Eric didn't hesitate. He had learned from watching Rupert a few minutes before that the quicker you answered, the quicker you were released. "W-H-A-T, he squealed. "Spells what?" Still holding him by the ears, the Trunchbull lowered him back in his chair behind his desk. Then she marched back to the front of the class, dusting off her hands one against the other like someone who's been handling something rather grimy. "That's the way you make 'em learn, Miss Honey," she said. "You take it from me. It's no good just telling them. You gotta hammer it into them. There's nothing like a little twisting and twiddling to encourage them to remember things. It concentrates minds wonderfully." You could do permanent damage, Miss Trunchbull, Miss Honey cried out. Oh, I have. I'm quite sure I have, the Trunchbull answered, grinning. Eric's ears will have stretched quite considerably in the last couple of minutes. They'll be much longer now than they were before. There's nothing wrong with that, Miss Honey. It'll give him an interesting pixie look for the rest of his life. But Miss Trunchbull. Oh, do shut up, Miss Honey. You're as wet as any of them. If you can't cope in here, then you can go find a job in some cotton wool private school for rich brats. When you've been teaching as long as I have, you realize it's no good at all being kind to children. Teachers shouldn't be kind to children? What's she talking about? Read Nicholas Nickleby, Miss Honey, by Mr. Dickens. Read about Mr. Wackford Squeers, the admirable headmaster of Dotheboys Hall. He knew how to handle the little brutes, didn't he? He knew how to use the birch, didn't he? He kept their backsides so warm you could have fried eggs and bacon on them. A fine book, that. But I don't suppose the bunch of morons you got here will ever read it, because by the look of them, they're never going to learn to read anything. It's like a high school or college level book. That's not an easy book for kindergartners. I've read it, Matilda said quietly. The Trunchbull flicked her head round and looked carefully at the small girl with the dark hair and the deep brown eyes sitting in the second row. What did you say? She asked sharply. I said I've read it, Miss Trunchbull. Read what? Nicholas Nickleby, Miss Trunchbull. You're lying to me, madam, Miss Trunchbull shouted, glaring at Matilda. I doubt there's a single child in this entire school who's read that book. And here you are, an unhatched shrimp, sitting in the lowest form there is, trying to tell me a whopping great lie like that? Why do you do it? You must take me for a fool! Do you take me for a fool, child? Well, Matilda said, then she hesitated. She would have liked to have said, well, yes, I jolly well do think you're a fool. But that would have been crazy. Well, she said again, hesitating, still refusing to say no. The Trunchbull sensed that the child was thinking, and she didn't like it. Stand up when you speak to me, she snapped. What is your name? Matilda stood up and said, my name is Matilda Wormwood, Miss Trunchbull. Wormwood, is it? The Trunchbull said. In that case, you must be the daughter of that man who owns Wormwood Motors. Yes, Miss Trunchbull. He's a crook, the Trunchbull shouted. A week ago, he sold me a second-hand car that he said was almost new. I thought he was a splendid fellow then. But this morning, while I was driving that car through the village, the entire engine fell out onto the road. The whole thing was filled with sawdust. That man's a thief and a robber. I'll have his skin for sausages. You see if I don't. Remember, Matilda's dad usually does sneaky things to cars to make them seem like they're new when they're really old and broken down. He is clever at his business, Matilda said. Clever my foot, the Trunchbull shouted. Miss Honey tells me that you're meant to be clever too. Well, madam, I don't like clever people. They're all crooked. You are most certainly crooked. Before I fell out with your father, he told me some very nasty stories about the way you behaved at home. But you'd better not try anything in this school, young lady. I shall be keeping a very careful eye on you from now on. Now sit down and keep quiet. That's the end of the chapter, and I'm a little disappointed because Miss Trunchbull has not gotten into that jug of water that has a newt in it yet. And after all the terrible things she just did, I really think she has that coming. I hope that happens in the next chapter, and I hope you will tune in again soon. Bye, friends. See you later.